10 Golden Battlegrounds minions that are worse than the original, starting with Wrath Weaver. When printed, it read, after you play a demon, deal 1 damage to your hero and gain +2/+2. It existed that way for many, many years until it was eventually nerfed to say +2/+1. But either way, for the sake of this video, that is irrelevant. The part that we care about is that up until April of 2024, the golden version of Wrath Weaver said, after you play a demon, deal 1 damage to your hero and gain either +4/+4 or +4 and +2, depending on the version in time. And you may think that, hey, I am now gaining the same amount of stats on my pink men, and my hero is taking less damage, and I have an extra space freed up on the board. This is a win-win-win. However, the main use for Wrath Weaver is that you want to actually be damaging your hero. Demons, or the self-damage demon strategy, is the entire reason for Wrath Weaver to exist, and so you're actually better off using 2 individual pink men instead of a golden pink man, because you want to deal 1 damage to your hero more than 1 time. Because of cards such as Floating Watcher that gain stats when your hero takes damage, you actually would prefer to take that damage twice. And you may say, well, but I'm dying, and so it's worth the trade-off. Theoretically, that would be true, except the devs, planned around that strategy with the fact that, like, for it to be a good strategy, you have to not kill yourself in mind. Starting out, the ways that you could get around this problem of actually taking damage was a lot harder to come by, with cards like Melganis being all the way up on tier 5. But in recent years, you have cards like Solar Winder on turn 2 that take the 1 damage that you deal to your hero with the pink man and not only give you that health back, but also gain a health itself. So now you can see that by taking your single regular pink man and your other single regular pink man and goldening them, you are now removing stats from your Floating Watcher, removing stats from your Solar Winder, and all in all, whatever other cards you may be using, making your board weaker or not making your board as strong. And so this is just strictly worse to have a golden Wrath Weaver than a pair of regular Wrath Weavers. However, in April of 2024, Blizzard finally said, yeah, you're right, this is true. This is actually just worse. It's why for years you saw people have 2 big Wrath Weavers and intentionally roll past the pair, because it was worse to have it be 1 than for it to be 2. Not just for the self-damage benefit, but also because of things like Selfless Hero, where you want to have 2 bodies that you can get 2 shields on, or something like a Leroy type card, like a Poison or a Venom hitting it. But Blizzard eventually buffed this card to now say, the golden version, after you play a demon, deal 1 damage to your hero and gain +2/+1 twice. Perfect fix. Now, when you golden your Wrath Weaver, you still get the double damage benefit that you want for your self-damage demon strategy, and you don't have to give up that when goldening it. This is a textbook case of a golden minion that is worse than the original. And I think these type of situations are super cool, because most of the time, the worst that happens when a minion is upgraded to golden is that you get the same text with double the stats. But in very rare situations, there are times where goldening your pair is just straight up worse than not doing so. So to continue exploring these cool situations, we will move on to Banana Slamma. Banana Slamma is actually the card that I think fits this video the best of any card. Banana Slamma reads, after you summon a beast in combat, double its stats. This was a card that was added on to the ever so popular Mama Bear Beast strategy, where you have a Mama Bear in play. When you play a beast during the buy phase, it gets buffed. And then if beasts, die and summon other beasts, such as Rat Pack, you then have more beasts being summoned in the fight. If your Mama Bear is still alive, they get buffed in the fight also. And so it's this general strategy of summoning beasts in the fight with buffs. And so you just have, instead of 7 big minions, you have a whole bunch of medium to big minions, and that's the strategy. And so with the Mama Bear strategy, you now have Banana Slamma as a key card that can be added to it. So you have, say, a 5/5 or a 4/4 buff from the Mama Bear, and then the total stats now that are on the beast get doubled with Banana Slamma. And if you have a pair of Banana Slamma, you actually double with the first Banana Slamma, and then it rechecks the stats and it doubles them again with the second Banana Slamma. So you're now getting a buff from Mama Bear or Goldrin in later years, if those 2 existed, right? You're getting a buff from some type of beast is what I'm getting at. And then Banana Slamma buffs it doubling and then doubling it again, which is a lot of stats. However, if you now take this strategy, but you triple your Banana Slamma, you take your pair and you make it a golden Banana Slamma, you are now only getting a card that says, after you summon a beast in combat, triple its stats. You may say, hey, well, that's just straight up better. instead of double, you're getting a triple. Well, the reason it's worse is because when you have a non-golden double, you're actually quadrupling instead of just doubling, because you're doubling twice. So if you have a pair, you're getting quadruple, and if you have a single golden, you're only getting triple. So you're better off where you were before, having 2 banana slammers than now having a golden one. So the only reason to really ever get the golden banana slammer is if you're confident that you could get another one added on to your board to have a golden and a regular. If you can do that, you're obviously just better off than you were before, but make sure to not go full slammer.
He has double Bramble Witch. Isn't that kind of bad for me? I might need a mama, guys. Wait, you don't attack? Oh, that's not good. 600. I might be dead, chat. I'm getting scammed out of this game. How big are you? 200, that's it? I'm dead. Well, we had fun. Need more summons? I mean, yeah, I needed Mama. Mama's really good.
Next up, we have a string of cards where there is some reason to golden, but you scale faster for most of the game by keeping your non-golden pair. Up first in the string of cards is Deep Blue Crooner, recently updated to say Spellcraft to give a minion +2/+3 until next turn, improve your future deep blues. So basically, at the start of every turn, you get a Spellcraft spell to your hand, which is like a temporary spell that you need to use this turn. It doesn't stick around, but it comes back every turn that you have a Spellcraft minion in play. And so once a turn with a Deep Blue Crooner, you can Spellcraft a minion, give it +2/+3, or whatever your larger deep blues are now, because every time you do that, you improve your future deep blues. So if you have a pair of Crooners, you would then get the double improve on your deep blues, as well as a double buff every turn. And so you're scaling twice, you're improving your deep blues twice a turn, and you're scaling quickly that way. And this is actually optimal for Deep Blue Crooner, is to keep this pair, because playing less deep sea blues means you have less numbers later. You're improving them less often. You'd eventually maybe want it to have more board space and to have like a bigger buff to do things with, but you don't want it too early because your future numbers will be smaller. In the same situation, we have our next card in the string, Eternal Night. Eternal Night currently reads, has +2 and +1 for each friendly Eternal Night that has died this game, wherever they are. So no matter how or how often or where or what, if you have an Eternal Night in play, it has an aura buff for how many Eternal Nights have died the entire game. So much like Deep Sea Crooner, if you have 2 of these, you are now buffing 2/1 to an Eternal Night, and then another 2/1 to an Eternal Night, because you're having 2 die. So your amount of Eternal Nights dying is higher if you keep the pair than if you just have the golden, because if you just have the golden, you're only having 1 Eternal Night die. And while you may get double the buff on the golden, so you still have the same stats, you aren't getting the double buff in the same way. In the case of a non-golden pair, you have 2 of them die and they both gain stats, but if you golden it, you're only having 1 die and 1 gain stats. While it does gain double stats, it's on less bodies. So simply put, in the first scenario, you have 2 dying, which both improve your future nights by +4 and +2, which means that both bodies gain +4 and 2 in stats. Whereas in the second scenario, you're only having 1 die gaining +4 and +2 on its body. So while you are gaining +4 and +2 on your future Eternal Nights in both scenarios, you're getting that buff on 2 bodies in the first scenario and only 1 body in the second scenario. It's not a terribly big deal at all, and honestly, it's kind of hard to explain if you haven't like played this a lot, kind of understand what I'm saying, but it's very similar to the Deep Crooner, where having more die and having an extra body to have the aura is actually more efficient and it will scale faster than just having 1 golden, but it's not that big of a deal, so I've kind of strung it along with these cards instead of making it its own segment. In both of those 2 situations, you want to golden it eventually for board space, but doing it too early will scale you less stats. Another example that reflects that in the way that you'd want to scale a non-golden pair instead, or really just entirely singles and never even have a pair, is the Baller Elementals. The Fireballer and Snowballer, respectfully, are a pair of cards that work together as ballers. Fireballer says, when you sell this, give your minions +1 attack, improve your future ballers. And then Snowballer says, when you sell this, give your minions +1 health, improve your future ballers. Much like with the Deep Blue Crooner, every time you sell a baller, any baller, whether a fire or snowballer, will have a higher number. So if I sell a snowballer, my next snowballer would say, give your minions +2 health, or my next fireballer would say, give my minions +2 attack. so on and so forth. So if I've sold 6 of any number of these ballers, whichever one is next would give 7 of that number, either attack or health, to my whole board, as well as improve my future baller. This, as like a quick aside, probably like my favorite sub or like strategy in all of Battlegrounds. It's like, it's never like a full thing really. It's just kind of like something you do with elementals when you have a lot of money and you're cycling, or something that you could kind of do with like the Magic Fin today, right? It's had a lot of uses, and like for whatever reason, I just really love Temperature Shift, the card that gives these two, and I just really love ballers. Like even the tier 2 strat with that certain anomaly where you like could stand 2 and just spam ballers, like it's just for whatever reason really cheeky, really fun. I really love ballers. It's hard to explain if you haven't experienced it, just how fun they are, because it's just like a 2-mana card that like does something when you sell it. It like seems kind of simple, but it's just so cool and so fun when you get in those scenarios where you can play lots of them and you can actually build a board using them. I really love these ballers. But in the confines of this video, unless you're fishing for like a specific triple reward that you like really need, you're better off just selling all 3 of them separately, or just selling the 2 you have and not even buying the 3rd one, depending on your situation, because you'll get more numbers on all your future ballers if you don't triple it. Whereas if you triple it, sure, like the next baller that you sell would gain double instead of the single number that it's on, but then it's only increasing your baller 1 time, and so unless you're like dead that turn or whatever, like you're getting less stats on future ballers, and so you're getting less stats on your board, and you're not scaling as much, and so it's really just only if you really want a triple reward for some reason. Before we move on to cards that are just straight worse to golden, I'm throwing an honorable mention in here that kind of fits in with the string, but technically doesn't, and that is Deflectobot. I just want to get this out there because I feel like I'm gonna get a lot of comments about it otherwise. Deflectobot is a mech that has Divine Shield and says whenever you summon a mech during combat, you gain 2 attack and Divine Shield. This is like a primary mech strategy for years, where you make big Deflectobots and you have things that die and summon mechs so they can get more shields and they can hit things multiple times. And so it's almost always bait to triple your 2 huge Deflectobots into 1 huge Deflectobot, because you're getting less shields, less refreshes, and it's just worse. And it could die to like something like a Leroy all on its own now. However, this doesn't fit in the same way the others do, in my opinion, because from a card standpoint, there's no like future scaling lost. There's no like stats lost or future stats lost. It's just 1 body, like any other card. But I do want to mention that quick so that a bunch of people aren't like, what about Deflectobot? Because I think you would otherwise. But with that said, let's get back to some cards that are just straight up worse to golden. This next card seems similar to something like an Eternal Night, but I think it is unique in the way that it works, and as a result, it is just plain wrong to triple. The card we have next is Myexna. Myexna, originally a minion from the Curse of Naxxramas set and constructed, was introduced into Battlegrounds in its early days, and simply says, Poisonous. It is simply a Tavern tier 6 minion with 2 attack, 8 health, and the Poisonous keyword. Myexna is kind of like those last cards, but all you get when you triple it is golden with the same stats. But in the case of this pair specifically, you're removing a poisonous minion from your board. You're shrinking 2 poison keywords into 1 poison keyword. And I don't know about you, that's definitely worse in my eyes, because the card unbuffed, unlike Deflectobot, you don't buff this card, so there's nothing invested into it necessarily, but it's just good on its own, right? You would rather have 2 of them. Also, alongside Myexna, you have Leroy. Having 1 Leroy, when it dies, kills whatever killed it. Having a 2nd Leroy, kills whatever killed it. Having a golden Leroy, just kills the minion that killed the first Leroy, and then it's gone. And you have 1 less destroy a minion effect, whether poisonous or Leroy, on your board. So Myexna and Leroy are cards that, while they do get double stats with the same effect, it is just simply worse to golden your pair. On to now more cards that are worse when golden. Let's start with one that breaks my brain, but is something we experienced, whether fortunately or not fortunately, not too long ago. Up next, we have Flag Bearer. Sky Pirate Flag Bearer to be exact. Sky Pirate Flag Bearer, originally reading, Start of combat, give your other pirates Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 pirate, it attacks immediately. It was eventually nerfed to Start of combat, give your other pirates Death Rattle, summon a Scallywag. But regardless, if you had a comp revolving around Bone Render, another problem child card from the Battlegrounds world that says after you summon a different minion in combat, summon an extra copy of it. This is of course revolving around pirates and the 1/1 that attacks immediately. You give all your minions the 1/1s that attacks immediately, and then they attack, presumably doing something when they attack. You're not just hitting something for 1, although you could. theoretically you're buffing your board while doing it, and through Bone Render and a couple of flag bearers, you're giving a whole bunch of summons, and the Bone Renders are duplicating those summons over and over again, and you're attacking like an infinite amount of times. Don't need to get into too much detail with it. It's on the screen for you here, kind of seeing some of the ways that you can fight with this comp. But essentially, 2 flag bearers is greater than 1 golden flag bearer, because 1 non-golden is essentially identical to a golden, because golden scallywag, or in the old version, a 2/2 instead of a 1/1, it's essentially the same as non-golden. So you'd rather have 2 of them than 1 of them. Like, your text is technically going up on the golden version, like you're getting a 2/2 or you're getting a golden scallywag. But a golden scallywag and a regular scallywag and a 1/1 and a 2/2 are identical in this situation. So you're literally just may as well sell your second flag bearer if you want to make your board weaker. Why spend 3 gold buying another one to then do what you could have done by just selling it? So that's the idea, is you're just summoning a bajillion of these 1/1s, theoretically buffing your board, theoretically destroying your opponent, and by goldening the flag bearer, you're just straight up making your board worse. This is also true of like Bone Render, but it gets a little wonky where like 2 golden 1 base, 1 golden 2 base, there's like different combinations where it's better, and so you wouldn't want to golden it. But in those situations, you still have at least 1 golden, so it doesn't fit quite as well here as the flag bearer scenario. But either way, a fitting example of a non-golden pair that will be made worse by goldening it.
These odds are wrong. I'm 100% here. And unless he's disconnecting, I ruin his turn timer too.
This far into the video, and still a huge unique situation to go over. In this next unique situation, we have a magnetic minion in a Cordotron. You could kind of make the case for others, I suppose, but this one's certainly one that fits the best. Magnetic, at the start of your turn, gain 1 gold. The way it works, simple. You play it on your board, and at the start of your turn, you get an extra gold. You put it on a mech by magnetizing it. At the start of your turn, you start with 1 more gold than you would have otherwise. And if I put an Cordotron on the minion, and then another Cordotron on the same minion, and then a third Cordotron on the same minion, at the start of the next turn, I'll have 3 more gold. If, however, I buy an Cordotron, and then buy my triple Cordotron, I now have a golden Cordotron that says, at the start of your turn, gain 2 gold that I can then play or put on a mech. And so I am gaining less gold as a result of the triple instead of just playing all 3 single ones. So unless you somehow generate a triple in the combat, which, great times, you would just never want to invest your money into the triple. You'd rather just play them all individually. You get more gold. And in the case of like the current mech strategies where you get buffs to your minions for the amount of magnetics they have, you'd rather just have the extra magnetics also for that. So you're getting more gold and more stats by not discovering a 6-shot that you most of the time won't even want. So super easy case there. You just kind of want to play these cards much like the ballers on their own. If for whatever reason you triple it, you still get at least the 2 gold buff. Now that we're in the thick of things, let's quickly rule out some cards you could technically argue for to be included in this video, but I felt weren't realistic enough to make way. An example of this is something like Peggy. If you have 2 Peggies, and those are your only 2 pirates, Peggy's 30 bone, whenever a card is added to your hand, give another friendly pirate +1/+1. If you only have 2 Peggies, they're your only pirates, they are now buffing each other every time a card is added to your hand. You're getting 1/1 on one Peggy, 1/1 on the other Peggy, and they're buffing each other up. As soon as you were to golden that Peggy, you no longer have anything to buff, and so now it's doing nothing. Like, sure, in that instance, a pair is better, but you'd always rather in a regular game, just triple it if that's what you're doing, because you're gonna have another pirate anyway. A similar card like this is Red Whelp. If you have 2 Red Whelps, or even 7 dragons and 2 Red Whelps, you're shooting for a certain amount of damage with those Red Whelps, and if you combine them, you're now shooting less because you have less dragons on the board. Simplest way to put it is you have 2 Red Whelps, no other dragons. They're each shooting for 2. Golden one shoots for 1 twice. That's less damage, that's less good. But again, doesn't really make sense in an actual game. Another example of this is honestly Fellbat. And that's true because old Fellbat used to say your other demons consume. And so you used to have 2 Fellbats for them to be able to buff each other. And then as soon as you goldened it, it wouldn't buff anything anymore. But much like Peggy, that's unrealistic. You can just double it up to get the double stats text on Fellbat and then buff another demon, right? Because like Fellbat as a card, goldening it is just straight up better, right? You now would gain double the stats instead of regular. So obviously this card doesn't fit in the video because its golden version is twice as good as its regular. But there is like an argument to say 2 Fellbats if they're their only demons is better, but we're not including that also. And those are the reasons why we're not including those cards. There are probably other ones like that, but unless the golden is like actually worse for scaling, we can't even sort of make an argument for it. Up next, we have a pair of cards in a really unique situation around them. We have Alley Cat and we have Murloc Tidehunter. Especially these cards are worse when you golden if you're playing something like Shudderwock or Jandis, and as a result, you're using the battle cry to summon multiple of the token to then farm triples that way. So instead of goldening the battle cry, which would then summon a golden token and you can't do anything with making more of them, you'd rather have the original so that you can make more of them by triggering its battle cry or by putting it back in the shop and buying it again to make another token, because you're getting more triples that way than if you just triple the battlecry minion itself instead of the token. And if you do this type of a strategy with Khadgar, you can suddenly see that, like, oh, it's not just like a little bit different, it's actually a whole lot worse. Because when Khadgar's in play, cards that summon minions summon twice as many. So if you have a Khadgar and you play a battlecry like an Alley Cat or Tidehunter, you would get 2 tokens. If you have a golden Khadgar, you'd summon 3 times as many. So you'd have just an immediate instant triple when you play one of these cards if you have enough board spaces to make the 1/1s. So a pretty popular strategy when you were like, I don't know, kind of popping off, is you'd be able to completely transition from one comp to the next because you managed to hoard enough resources or just like lose enough life in the early game while pulling this off to farm a ton of triples to then get a bunch of 5 and 6 cost cards. And if you at any point had just golden the Alley Cat or the Tidehunter, suddenly the ability to do that is completely gone. And unless you can find another one of those cards, you're in a much worse spot than you were before. So kind of a fringe case, I guess, because like a golden Alley Cat's just gonna have double the stats as a regular Alley Cat. Like in the current game, there's not, and on like most heroes, there's not a reason not to buy the triple battlecry minion. But this is kind of why people to this day have like a residual memory of like sell the battlecry off and keep the token, because it used to severely and significantly matter. That's all we have time for today. 10 golden Battlegrounds minions that are worse than the original. Are there any examples of this that you could think of? Let me know in the comments below. And if you made it this far into the video, odds are you enjoy my videos and will enjoy the next one and will probably enjoy the last one. So be sure to subscribe and check out this video here where I talk about other Battlegrounds minions. It was a nice trip down memory lane.